Okay, welcome everybody. Give me a few minutes to let people in, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As we wait for everyone's arrival. Got my Walking Dead t-shirt on for inspiration today, or one of them at least. Hello. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Hi.
Okay. Hi. No, I have it on mute. So so we
Let
don't
me
have
make
any.
sure Robin knows how to get in.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. My colleagues are going to be joining us momentarily. And then we can officially get rolling.
He'll be coming soon.
Okay. Yeah, how you can tell we're getting older. We're all wearing reading glasses.
Yes, I have to. Yeah, for the laptop. Otherwise, I'll be squinting like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, time passes. At least it's, well, at least we're not on the level of the zombies or anything. So that's always good.
Well, we're survivors, like
Mhm.
the characters that are still there in season 11.
Yeah. Well, there probably are some unrealistic parts of it, but oh well. It would be an awfully boring TV show if the survivors all died after 6 months. You wouldn't have a Walking Dead show.
So
Although the genius NBC executives who had a chance to have it broadcast and asked if they loved the show, but did it need all those zombies is kind of out the window. I still
I
love
just
that.
have one question for. I have one question about Walking Dead that has been nagging me since very early on. Since they knew that they could survive if they just put some zombie blood on themselves, why was it so rare that they used the superpower
well,
blending in?
yeah, probably it wasn't the healthiest of things to do since you know, I imagine that could wind up getting you sick from a lot of other things. Kind of
They could have
ironic
made
that.
a vest, for example, that they
Yeah,
only put on when they need to blend in, and that one they just put whatever zombie guts that they wanted to
yeah.
put on.
I guess
But
they couldn't. I guess they
it's
couldn't.
better to be alive than dead.
Yeah. Well, they did have in Fear the Walking Dead that Nicholas, I believe, was his name. He's spent a lot of the first 2 seasons.
Yeah. So
Had, I guess it's on the level of how much you want to
survive.
go, yeah, go in for that, something like that. I mean, because you had at one extreme the whisperers, who of course were wearing it, uh, all the time.
And on their faces, I mean, they went to
Yeah,
that extreme to put create skins for their face.
yeah, and of course, by the time they spend a lot of time doing that, they pretty much go off the rails at you know some point having to wear that all the time. So I suspect it was kind of a way they tried to keep themselves human, as opposed to
It's a good
uh,
point. Yeah, that's symbolically something. They try very hard to not give in to
yeah,
zombifying.
they only do it when absolutely necessary. And well, you saw the kind of psychological condition the whisperers were in after wearing those outfits for so long. Not exactly the safest of habits to have either. Yeah, or the most mentally, how shall we say, helpful in maintaining balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did do it in a pinch, but I think it was just the idea of, and if you and kids, and there were also times where if you slipped up, or like in the first season when there was rain from you know when they were wearing the zombie guts, the blood washed off, and they all had to run like hell in order to survive. In that scene, later when they got to Alexandria, they had that one where they were all trying to walk through the huge horde of zombies, and somebody basically kind of sneezed or freaked out, and then the zombies caught on to them completely. So
So it
that
came with
was,
some dangers.
yeah. I mean, or if you made a noise, or you sneezed, or you freaked out, if you're in the middle of a horde of zombies and they figure out you're not a zombie, you're in a heck of a lot of trouble. I think in season 11 we saw that a couple of times too, where they were doing that trick, and for one reason or the other,
It didn't
as
work
our,
too well.
yeah, well, the I don't remember if it was Lydia or someone else. Yeah, I think it was Lydia. Her boyfriend was getting attacked. She yelled out, and the zombies bit her because she was making noise. And they managed to save her by cutting off her arm, but still, uh, it's a close thing if you're doing that all the time and you suddenly find yourself exposed. So it's probably something better not to have done on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think like when Michonne is first introduced, her approach is a little bit more reasonable. That you have two walkers, you get rid of their teeth and their jaws, and then you have them on like a chain, so they basically stay away from you. Yeah, that seems to be kind of a somewhere in the middle of the road compromise.
But I think I would have just the whole time I was watching the show, I always ask myself, what would I do? And I think I would have tried to
Yeah,
come up with some kind of a suit, or um,
yeah,
maybe even a helmet instead, so you that muffles the sound
mm,
if you make a sound inside, and then
true.
I think I would have just tried to think of a way to protect myself without
Of
being so
course,
exposed.
manufacturing something like that is one thing, and there's also the danger, of course, if you get attacked by a horde of them, they may well, no matter how protective the suit is, they may well be able to cut through it.
Yeah, but at the same time, also put zombie guts on top of it, and like,
yeah, but
I
then
mean, just layers of protections. I would have. I imagine I would have wanted to have something
yeah.
like that.
Although you would have to figure out something for the different times of year. I mean, you wouldn't want to be wearing a heavy suit like that in the middle of August. Say, like you were trying to survive here in the valley. I don't think you want to
Yeah,
be
with the
running
suit.
around wearing a heavy suit of padding or armor or something like that in the middle of the Rio Grande Valley in the summer. Yeah, you'll probably die from heat exhaustion as opposed to the zombies. So hey, at least the zombies didn't kill us, but the heat did. Yeah.
I try to move north. See, winter Texans know what they're doing. In the
Yeah.
winter they're in a mild climate, and then in the summer they go, migrate like the birds.
Yeah, although I'm not sure how well migrating, could be risky too in the Walking Dead, because God knows who you're going to encounter, and kind of unlike the George Romero universe, the Walking Dead actually, walk, and you could encounter a huge horde of them. Plus, God knows what kind of survivors you might run into.
Could you outrun them on a bicycle?
Yeah, that would. Yeah, do like a Stranger Things on them, everybody ride their bicycles. That could actually be pretty
We should all create a parody of Walking Dead at the English department, and each
Yeah.
of us comes up with some crazy idea of how we would survive.
Well, the bicycle one would actually kind of work. It would be maneuverable. It wouldn't. But you'd have to be limited to the roads. I
But the
think.
roads are not very clean. Probably
Yeah.
you can encounter debris that it gets you a flat tire in the middle of the zombies.
Yeah, and once the roads get overgrown, the utility of something like that is going to get. But I mean, at first, yes, it would be. Before everything got overgrown, that would actually be a great form of transportation. Although, again, there would also come the issue of exhaustion, that you could get yourself really tired, and so you'd have to find safe places, not only for yourself, but also to store the bicycle, which could be a challenge. Well, we might as well go ahead and, we actually have already started, in essence, talking about it. But, we
trying to
can
see in the house what's happening. I don't know if Robin is having some difficulties, but
we can go ahead and start with, of course, the rundown of welcome everyone to our examination of the final season of The Walking Dead and the future of the Walking Dead universe. And then we'll also be taking a look at The Last of Us and what that represents for the future of the zombie genre, and how extremely promising that it indeed appears to be with shows like The Last of Us, and renewed focus on, sharper focus for the future of the Walking Dead universe. I mean, I guess I'll start off with a comparison of the two distinct kind of seasons, that we had. I mean, Fear of the Walking Dead is ending this season, but we could compare the pratfalls of kind of that the shows were running into, that I think are part of the reason that the Walking Dead Mother show came to an end for a number of reasons. First of all, they had reached the point in the comic where, with the Commonwealth story, where Robert Kirkman had wrapped the comic book story up, and so it seemed like a logical place to end it where he had, and then move on from there. Also, both, something that was happening with both shows was that they were kind of getting, the cast was so large that it was really starting to get tough to focus on individual characters. You had to spend, because of the different formats of storytelling, it's more difficult, I think, to focus on individual characters quite as much in a visual format as opposed to a comic book. And so, the Walking Dead handled it well with having all the different people interact. And of course, the last season was essentially 24 episodes. So that gave them plenty of time to work with. But still, there were some characters in the final season who were kind of, oh, they're still around? Where the heck have they been? And and The Walking Dead handled that very well, but the Fear of the Walking Dead have been doing the same type of story. And whereas season 6 had been really good and creative, season 7 was in a lot of ways a mess. It's like they had written themselves into a corner, and the characters were acting in ways that they really hadn't before. And so the story really suffered. I think, that, it was time to Fear the Walking Dead is ending this upcoming season with 12 episodes. And it's probably for the best at this point, I think. Because it really makes a new beginning for everything in terms of the show. But certainly the final season of The Walking Dead, the parent show, was extremely well well done, that had story arcs that Robin, that covered all three, that there were small arcs told in all three, but then overall arcs that were told on a larger basis. And really, it also they cleverly had it feature kind of the ultimate threats, both in terms of a human opponent and then zombies at the same time. So like in the very last episode.
That's one thing that was true for the entire show, the 11 seasons. Mm-hmm. The human opponents were always more interesting than the zombies. The zombies, I felt, mm-hmm. were almost like an excuse for the humans to play out their conflict. And so that's what made it entertaining, because there was always a new human problem, as opposed to the zombies. As I said, probably you can find a way to deal with the zombies pretty soon, I think, as opposed to the humans who are more cutthroat, because they also think.
Yeah, it's like the T-shirt that said, "Fight the dead, fear the living," because you can never tell what the living might be up to. Whereas the zombies are pretty obvious. Although in season 11, we did see the zombies start to evolve, the variants, the ones that could climb and maybe move just a little bit faster. We'll pick up on that again, but they haven't gotten to at the end of the Walking Dead World Beyond series, there was a after credit scene set in France where a woman who had been working on a cure, had played a tape of that doctor from the first season, and she was shot and killed by somebody saying that you guys started it, and they locked her in a warehouse, and she reanimated, and she was extremely fast and extremely strong. So if that's an evolution to the point where we're suddenly going to start to get zombies that can run and are strong, this is going to be a problem for them. They're so used to one of our uh, audience says that the dead are predictable. The humans are not. Of course, if you suddenly get the zombies being able to climb and go fast, and they're super strong, all that goes out the window. You know.
But what I also was disappointed in relation to the zombies, that the whole time in the United States, all the communities there, they didn't show, and I assumed that something like that was going on somewhere, that they would be looking for, that there would be scientists in labs, what's left of labs, that would try to figure out not just antidotes and things like that, but also I would try to, if I was a scientist, I would try to find a way to poison them or something, do something for them to die, and then plant poison zombie or poison corpses or something, kind of what they do with mosquitoes. They genetically modify mosquitoes to reduce the population by creating super attractive mosquitoes that can reproduce, and then that kind of stops them from multiplying.
Yeah,
I mean, I just wanted to see, where's the science? Like, everybody's just a survivalist, but where's science? Because that's what is saving us from COVID. Or
we've got hints of that, I think, toward the in the final seasons. I mean, the survivors that we were focused on were tending to just be entirely focused on surviving. We did see,
but 11 seasons and you don't see it. I was hoping to see them. Yeah.
Well, in The Walking Dead World Beyond, we have that Civic Republic. And they had.
Aren't the scientists just presented as kind of bad guys who are experimenting on the zombies to weaponize them? And so where are the good scientists?
Well, they could weaponize them against each other, against other zombies. That would make sense to me.
A lot of it in Romero, but I think probably a lot of the scientists who were left might have gone over to something like the Civic Republic, where they had time to work, and they were willing to make whatever compromise they needed to further their research. I mean, we saw individuals studying once in a while, but not too much of it. I think to do something like that, you probably need a very well-established organization or society to do something like that long term. And even then, even if you did find something to poison the zombies, trying to distribute it is going to be the trick.
Well, if you find something that can attract them, and then just all of them would just go and eat something that you left for them, and then they would
within that area, if you could make that work. I mean, you're talking about, it would have to be something done on a small scale, then maybe larger scale. But, of course, even if somebody developed that, who's to say that there wouldn't be, several groups, larger groups, that try to come in and grab it so they can offer it.
And that would happen. That would be interesting. One season where the scientists are under attack by the survivalists. And
although I'm not sure how long the scientists would last in that situation. I mean, that's kind of, scientists aren't exactly known for having their best defense, just saying,
Sure, but some of them could be clever and find ways to outsmart.
Yeah, of course. And you also have to find something.
In my imaginary, season 12 is with scientists. But.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of that going forward into the future, because I mean, that seemed to be one of the angles they're going to, is the idea that there's some folks that are going to be looking for cures or racing to find some, and that might draw them into conflict as well. We also have the hint, probably one of the few redeeming things at the end of season 7 of Fear the Walking Dead, was a possibility that Alicia, one of the characters on there, main characters, had gotten bitten, and was somehow able to develop immunity from the infection and beat it. Now, it was deliberately left vague and unclear whether she died and it's her ghost running around, or if she actually physically recovered and is now immune to it. And maybe the zombies won't even bite her, which could be a very intriguing angle in and of itself, provided that gets picked up on, which if they can or can't, depending on what they choose. I mean, it would be, you could pick up on that pretty easily, or you could go like, yeah, well, not necessarily play it.
Well, I find it interesting that Last of Us, since we're going to talk a little bit about a comparison, Last of Us is about an immune person. So,
yeah.
And of course, you would imagine that that's a big commodity that everybody wants. And somebody has to save her, somebody tries to get her. And that makes it, it's kind of almost like Last of Us has what Walking Dead is lacking. And also Walking Dead may have what Last of Us is lacking for now, which is more a sense of community. So that's kind of, I can see them as opposites in some ways of ech other.
Well, they wanted to have some differences in terms of the story of what's what was going on. There were at least some parts of the government that managed to survive in The Last of Us, where everything just completely falls apart in The Walking Dead.
But I have a theory. Can I quickly give you my theory about the two shows? Just a very general comparison for me. And I might write a paper for next year's popular culture conference with that. But for me, Walking Dead is an American show. And I think it's about America, an American survivalism, frontier, democracy. Well, the group that survived, the group that we follow, they're always in conflict with a group that has a different type of structure. So we have a group we have dictatorships that they come across. We have kind of an apocalypse now with the Whisperers and Alpha, who is like a Kurtz, completely gone mad with power. So we have different kinds of social structures, cannibals, and who seem very nice, but they will eat you. And in the end, the one that is the most democratic, which is the ones that we follow, they are America. They are, and it is a democracy because, whoever survives and how they get along is that they don't put one person on top, not even Rick, who could be a leader. They have leader types of people, but nobody wants power that much. And they also have diversity. We have gay and lesbian couples. We have different types of disabled types of characters, right? We have actors who are deaf and things like that, and they speak sign language. And so it's a very inclusive and also a society where everybody seems to have a say, so they can contribute to the group. But so this is, to me, a show about America making it through all adversity. And Last of Us is also, maybe, I don't know, because I only saw the beginning. We only saw the beginning of it, but to me, it's set up in a dictatorship where individual characters try to break away from that system that is oppressive already from the very start. So maybe it will be more Americanized in some sense. It's maybe more futuristic, like what could happen if somebody took control in America like that, and then you'd be left with only individuals who try to defend freedom and things like that. So these were the ideas that were floating in my head, trying to compare the two shows. I don't know what you guys
much about the game, really. I think it's an American developers for the game.
Sure.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's
I've never played it.
culture on Earth. I'm just saying that
Right.
I haven't seen in it yet something that is, to me, so clearly defined as American democracy in the ideal form that I think Walking Dead is
Well,
showing.
I think we could look at the different evolution of society within The Last of Us versus The Walking Dead. I think you could argue that one of the biggest differences comes from the speed of the zombies. In The Walking Dead, until just recently, the zombies are slow, and thus become predictable, and so societies can evolve a more egalitarian, equality, shared responsibility, diversity, because the zombies have been kind of predictable and people know how to deal with them. But the Last of Us, the clickers, are extremely fast. And they were from the start.
Wait, did you know that they're not allowed to say the word zombie on set of Last of Us?
Yeah, there was some, I read that the creator was disputing that, but I can understand why. They want the show to have its own unique identity as opposed to, oh, it's another zombie show. But because
But
the zombie,
it makes sense. Yeah, it just makes sense to me that it's true that and we've seen this in a time of crisis, somebody can very quickly militarize society and take over and quickly turn society into a totalitarian militarized society.
Well, and
that's always maybe a fear.
And with The Last of Us, that might be a much more desirable desirable option, especially at first, because you're dealing with an extremely fast threat. You can't. There's not really time to relax or to figure out a strategy. In The Last of Us, because the clickers are so damn fast, and thus the people that have the biggest machine guns and the biggest weapons are going to be a whole lot more appealing, and you'll probably be willing to give up a whole lot more freedom.
And you just hope they don't shoot you, because
yeah,
who's to say that they don't start just shooting also people depending on race, gender, social status, and all that.
Isn't that what they're suggesting in the show?
Well, I think
not like racially,
sometimes
but
are killing people who were in.
Yeah, well, because the show taking the events when Joel and Ellie make their journey, it's a number of years in. At that point, people start to feel more safe, and so they start to rebel against the totalitarianism and the dictatorship that had evolved. That's why you're seeing so much fighting, infighting among them, because people are starting to feel safe. And so they're starting to, fight back against the dictatorship that embodied or that they were willing to put up with in the early days. But you can never forget the threat, like that scene in The Last of Us, toward the last major group they encounter before they get to their final destination. They're so busy fighting each other, they forget that there could be a threat of the clickers underground, and they just ignore it. And of course, woe be unto them for ignoring it, because when they do, out pops, all the zombies, all the clickers, and they don't care which side you're on or not. They're going after everybody. So
it's kind of the usual pessimistic comment on human nature that we would destroy ourselves by infighting, even if we had an overwhelming threat that was going to destroy us all, right? Which, doesn't seem that far from the truth after the last 5 years.
Well, if we got to the point where we kind of were able to ignore the threat or forget the threat was there or get too comfortable with it, then we could end up in a really bad situation, because we've forgotten what the greatest danger was.
I also thought it was really interesting in The Last of Us that the rebels, the rebels are almost always contextualized as, the good guys, and they're fighting against the tyrannical stand-in for the government. But this group of rebels was sort of more like a vicious group of no holds barred terrorists who believed that there was no choice except to execute their opponents and torture to get what they want. And it was very, very, very dark, right, vision of how society would attempt to reformulate itself, kind of redeemed by the characters, right, the decency of those two main characters. But there's not really an alternative, like a socio-political alternative that's positive. More in The Walking Dead, right? Like, communities are better than others, obviously. The cannibals are at the bottom, right?
Well, the one with Joe's brother, with the community of Joe's brothers, that seems to be, out of all the ones that we saw on there, perhaps the best alternative. Out of that, they seem to be the one that's most well balanced. Of course, they're in extreme isolation too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think maybe part of the reason that the rebels are just as bad as the government forces is that basically you have to be kind of hardcore to survive in this environment. It's, I mean, you just kind of have to be hard edge, kind of like the Reapers in the first part of the Walking Dead season 11. This is a smaller group that stayed together, but they're hardcore, they're dangerous, they've abandoned any type of decency, basically. They used to be American soldiers, but now they're just another pack of terrorists. I guess you could call them mercenaries. And when I learned the leaders called themselves the Pope, it's just like, oh boy. Some guy calling themselves a Pope, this isn't going to end well.
It's not going to end well, yeah.
Yeah, like the society in The Last of Us, where the leaders, some minister, as soon as they saw that, this isn't going to go well.
But it's interesting that in Walking Dead, just remember that there was some kind of a monarchy that they encountered, and it didn't completely get destroyed. It was more like, okay, let's just give up the title of king and then you can become one of us. And that's what happened.
Yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons live action role-playing team actually made it further than you expected them to, right?
Except it's all King Ezekiel. Okay, duh.
Yeah, Ezekiel. Sorry. He was first. Everybody called him king, and he had this a tiger. A lion.
Is it a tiger? It's a tiger. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Nice. He was kind of a good leader, though.
Yeah.
One of the rare cases where a solitary leader actually ends up being somebody who's relatively decent. You don't see too many of that on the show.
But he kind of has to give up his ego although we understand that maybe he was only to inspire others, that he was speaking himself in, so that he gives them hope that there's somebody in charge or somebody who knows what they're doing, but not because he had personal ambitions.
Yeah,
because it turns out he's a very generous man
it gives them a sense of leadership and to rally around. Although they still do have kind of a distinct leadership structure with the Commonwealth by the end of it, the second stage of the Commonwealth, after Governor Milton has gone to her own personal hell, Milton, her paradise lost, I guess you could call it. But we see that, of course, both shows show that there's a capacity for change, though. Joel at first doesn't care about Ellie and just kind of she's
because the focus first seemed to be on individualism and, just yourself, you and yourself, you have yourself to rely on, that's it. But when they start forming connections, they're deeper somehow, because they're not just, okay, let's just go with a group and let's hope it's a good group. It's more like, okay, I don't trust anybody right now, so you have to prove that you can earn my companionship or trust or friendship or love. So it's, although of course we start a little further into their survival, but it seems that's what one difference is, that this is a very individualistic at the beginning, the show. And what I like about that, it gives an opportunity for the showmakers to focus on character a lot. So it's very character based. Many episodes are just with two characters, like the Bill and Frank episode. Some people had bad reactions to, of course, because it was a gay couple, but still, I think people like that, the character development in this show.
That episode in particular was also a way to show that there is still decency in people, and the relationship between the two essentially made them better people. That they were, true companions with each other at the end. They had their ups and downs, but they never gave up on each other. And of course, I think that's kind of the big theme also in season 11 of The Walking Dead, is that this group can have arguments with each other. Daryl had his falling out with Carol. They can be at each other's throats.
Negan could be forgiven in this context of, okay, if you see the human in the other person and not the sum of their actions, then you can still forgive the person like Negan. But and mostly Negan, it was because the actor was so charismatic that they put him back in the show, right? He was supposed to die.
Well, he never died in the comic, but he in the TV show, Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Negan got a chance to play a bigger role because Rick never left the comic book in essence until he was killed at the very end of the comic book run, and Carl was still alive, so you kind of had them still dominating the landscape, whereas in the TV show, Andrew Lincoln departed, then Michonne departed, and so there was more of an opportunity to really focus in on Negan in terms of story. Plus, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's brilliant acting really made Negan both a hated figure and then somebody that you actually rooted for, because he showed that a person really could change.
Yeah, so I like that a lot of characters do change through the show. I mean, they have 11 seasons to do that, but I mean, even from the very beginning, they start seeing characters change to survive, or even they have this opportunity. This zombie apocalypse is an opportunity to reshape yourself. So that's how I think. Sorry.
And some do it for good, some end up going down the dark path.
Yeah, of course. But like Carol is the one that stands out at the beginning. She's a battered housewife, and then she just decides, I'm just gonna be my own person from now on, and she becomes really badass. But
although even she has her ups and downs in terms of dealing with it.
Completely. And she sometimes becomes a little scary and off the rails.
Well, and she also has guilt that she's carrying around, that time where they get to the relative safety of Alexandria and the kingdom, and Carol has to kind of go away for a while because the ghosts of what she's had to do come back to haunt her. She's able to overcome it. And, and no matter what their arguments, ultimately they all reunite when they need it the most and put aside whatever differences they might have had, even at its most extreme with Maggie, at least not wanting to kill Negan anymore. She doesn't forgive him.
but
she knows that she can trust him now, and that's kind of a remarkable progress, especially for her.
But I think the idea is that, again, to me, it comes back to this idea that democracy is what maybe brings out the good in people, and the future leader is what's her name, the Rick's daughter. I'm
Judith.
blanking on what. Judith.
Judith.
Yes, Judith is the one she's the one who befriended Negan when everybody hated him and wanted him dead, and she kind of inherits the goodness of her brother, Carl. So, and they are the future, and the future looks good if people, understand that, that people can change and they can give them a chance. And of course, children are willing to give a chance to adults, interestingly enough, not the other way around, because adults would say, oh, the child is where the good can just be raised with the child. We raise them good, but the children say, no, we can see more clearly than you adults. You can still do right by the community.
Well, and
the children are a symbol of hope, of course.
Somebody might have a question. Brittany? Right?
Okay.
I saw that somebody had their hand up.
Oh, okay. Well, with the two
characters, you can ask in the chat, and we can look at the chat to see if there are questions.
Yeah, with the two characters that were there, the ones that stayed from season 1 all the way to the end, which as I recall, I think that basically is only Carol and Daryl. We perhaps saw the greatest transformations. I mean, in the first season, would Daryl have ever been willing to go to a gate and let a woman who had, or somebody who had done so much damage to them, let them come in and get sheltered and even risk his own life to save somebody who had been their enemy in so many different ways? Just that progress that he made from just kind of being Merle's brother and problematic individual to somebody who was really willing to become the spiritual leader of this group is quite remarkable.
And I think, well, with Daryl, I remember there were a couple episodes that focused on him and one other character, and they gave him a chance to progress by slowing down the action and focusing on his character. There was one character where he was with this girl this whole episode, and at the end, I think she died. Do you remember? You must remember who it was.
But
it was one of the most moving episodes because
Maggie's sister, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it just showed that he has emotional abilities that maybe he didn't know he had. Emotional capacity to bring out his own emotions or to let them out, which you don't think about him that he could.
Well, and he kind of shows that he has that capacity even in the second season when Sophia disappears. Everybody else has given up, but Daryl is still going out there looking for her even after everybody else has given up. And that's the root, of course, of the unity and the really close friendship that develops between Carol and Daryl. That Carol appreciated the fact that he was the one that was last, most willing to go out there and search.
What do you have any thoughts on why they didn't allow Carol and Daryl to have a romance?
I guess
seemed like it was a teaser the whole show.
Yeah, and it might have happened in the spin-off series, but the actress who played Carol, Melissa McBride, didn't want to go over and film in Europe for a number of months during the year. So they did that put kind of an end to any like potential storyline romance. I think they kind of hinted at it, but I think they felt they were both so damaged and they appreciated their friendship so much more that they never really took it to that next level.
Well, maybe they didn't want to endanger the friendship. I guess sometimes
Yeah.
friendship can end when romance goes bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very
Maybe,
clear that they
of
do
course.
love each other, but in a way that's not, the kind of romantic love. And I think that's part of, how they overcome the challenges that their friendship has, that where they have their falling out. But they still love each other, and if they had gotten romantically involved, that would have been more problematic. And I think Daryl didn't really want to make the first move either, because he's kind of not. I don't think he wanted to kind of risk what he had, that relationship, that friendship he had with Carol.
For the characters, it makes sense. I'm just thinking for the showmakers, I hope it's not some form of ageism, because they thought, well, people want to see gray-haired characters in a romance, but they both have a different romance with somebody else. So it's not that. It's just, I guess, for them, friendship made more sense.
Yeah, and and perhaps the emergence of Rick and Michonne as a couple was, they decided to focus more attention on that, the romance of Rick and Michonne, or Michonne as the fans called it. I mean, and that was unique to the TV series. Rick was involved with Andrea for a long time in the comic book. Of course, Andrea lived a lot longer in the comic book than she did in the TV series. But
one thing that I have to get off of my chest is that one character that disappeared way too soon. There was a very strong character that I missed the whole show. He could have been there till the end. Was Shane? Was that his name?
Yeah, Shane.
Yeah, yes. John Bernthal's character.
Yeah,
and then the actor went on to do bigger things, or his own thing. He became popular for other characters, but I think they could have kept him. He was a very strong character.
Yeah, that would have been intriguing. I mean, in the comic, Shane dies in issue 6, so he in the comic, he technically didn't even make it out of the first season. The thought of Shane Latt living the entire, that would have been difficult given the way his character was being written. It almost reached the point where it's almost like a storyline necessity that Shane dies. And it's kind of difficult to imagine because so many things kind of result from Shane's death and so many character changes, that if Shane wouldn't have died, those things might not have taken place.
Well, Judith is his daughter, right?
It's hinted at, but we never know for sure.
Sure, but maybe they could have at least revived his memory at some point through her.
Yeah, it would have been intriguing to have him around, but just it's like that Glenn's death was horrible, but in terms of storyline, it's something that had to happen. Yeah.
Well, sure, because he was part of the group, but with Shane, he could have been a solo survivor somewhere else, and then they meet up with him later, like seasons later, or it could have been. But it's just something that stayed with me because I saw him as a strong character at the beginning. Why kill?
Yeah, it was a fascinating what if scenario, but it's kind of a spark event that sends Rick into kind of his second leadership phase, where it's like the dictatorship. I'm the boss, I'm in charge, which goes on for.
Speaking of that, in Fear the Walking Dead, we stopped watching. We were watching for a while, and for some reason, I found it so jarring to see what I consider the main character just briefly, summarily be killed. I thought, then why would I keep watching? Because the most interesting character to me was gone. So then, what, are you going to find a replacement? Like, I decided to leave the show. So I haven't really been watching here.
You kept up with all the variants.
Yeah, well, for me, Fear the Walking Dead really improved when Morgan switched over to Fear the Walking Dead. It was nice to, and although Shane was eliminated, Morgan, in contrast in the comic book, Morgan comes back, but he doesn't play that much of a role before he gets killed off. And I like the fact that in the Walking Dead TV show, the Fear of the Walking Dead, he's able to, have his own story and have his character continue, because the way that he was played by Lenny James, is so fantastic that I'm glad that his character just wasn't okay. Let's we'll follow the comic and get rid of him. And if they had tried to keep him on The Walking Dead, he just would have been a big face in the crowd and so forth. Whereas him going to Fear the Walking Dead, he could become the center of it.
So that's what we could still go back and try to watch, maybe starting at some point. If you can tell us, when do you think it started getting really good?
I'd say with season 3, when Morgan first gets there. As I recall,
I think we stopped before that.
Yeah, season 3, Morgan gets there. Skip season 7. That's pretty bad, although, or maybe read a summary of it, because if you go to season 8, you kind of are going to have to, skipping over a season is, you could start watching season 8 going, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. Sure, it's hard to catch up with plot details.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why they've kind of wrapped up season 11, is that now they can do shorter, more focused stories, as opposed to these big epic tales that have so many different moving parts.
Yeah,
I mean, as it did well, and I was kind of given I knew that the Walking Dead universe was going to continue. I honestly did not think season 11 would have the kind of ending that the comic book did. I just thought, this isn't going to work, because in the comic book, the zombies are essentially eradicated after Rick is killed by the governor's son. In the comic, I think I can give spoilers for the comic, because it's been several years and it doesn't match up to the TV series. The final issue is the zombie threat has been eradicated, and Carl is reading the stories about the exploits of his father to his daughter, who is essentially like replaced by Judith. But I didn't think, well, how can they do that if they're going to continue the Walking Dead universe and have all these characters split off into different shows? So I was expecting like full bloodbath at the end of the season 11.
Well, I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, because I just didn't, and I thought it was a very clever way they had to kind of end season 11 on a way the comic book did, but also have it continue. That you had most of the people staying in the Commonwealth area, where they kind of established a large functioning society, but different characters leave for different reasons. So, Daryl's still trying to find Rick, although he's going to wake up in the spinoff show, Daryl's going to end up in Paris, which is going to be quite interesting.
Sounds very interesting. Daryl in Paris. That's it.
Yeah.
Sounds more like parody, but it would be fun.
Yeah, well, especially, him not, he's of course not going to be able to speak a lick of French. And of course, but this, I think the biggest reason they're putting Daryl over in Paris is to pick up on the storyline that they laid the foundation for in that end credit scene in The Walking Dead World Beyond. Because you need to have somebody over there. And I think one of the lessons they learned from The World Beyond is that it's going to be a lot easier to sell a spin-off series if it features a very familiar, beloved character. So rather than just doing like a Walking Dead Paris, where they just focus on Paris and France, you have Daryl over there, so you have that audience who wants to go over there and see what happens with Daryl. Same thing with like the Walking Dead Dead City, which is going to feature Megan and Negan, yeah. Negan and Maggie going into New York City because Maggie's son has been kidnapped by some unidentified group. And she turns to Negan as kind of the one guy that, ironically, she can trust and who's badass enough to go in there and kick some ass and get back her son. And that's going to be an interesting combination, those two working together.
Well, she can trip him into helping her, right? It's mostly now Negan's guilt.
Well, and I think he would probably go anyway, just because he's a different person than he was. And also, if they kidnapped her child, if somebody's kidnapping her child, that means his child would also be at risk. Because if Maggie's a pretty badass character. So if somebody can kidnap her child, and like I said, she's pretty damn badass, I wouldn't want to be screwing with her. Then his child could be at risk as well. And it's better to go and deal with.
But he's also Glenn's child.
Yeah.
Which maybe, again, for him, it's redemption to save him when he killed his father.
Yeah, well, and it's also a chance for him to kind of have that reckoning with Glenn's child whenever Herschel, whenever they get caught up to it. I'm pretty sure the Dead City is going to go on for at least a couple of seasons.
That would be interesting. More like Gotham, but with zombies.
Yeah. Well, and it's what would New York City be like? And I think in The World Beyond too, there's some reference that the Civil Republic has some kind of base in New York. And of course, then we have as the third official spinoff, we have Rick and Michonne's saga that's going to be told next year. I don't know if it's just going to be six and done, or if they could bring the characters back in the future.
What's the setting? Yeah.
Pardon?
What's the setting?
They haven't really said given the title. I guess it's going to probably be a sprawling epic across the country. Because I mean, the last scenes they showed in season 11 had Rick and Michonne in extremely different places. So I have a feeling, and the original plan had been to have 3 movies featuring Rick and Michonne. But I think they were kind of smarter to move away from that 3 theatrical movies. I think it's better to keep it as a series and just do 6 full, really, high level episodes. And I think it's going to be spread across America. So we get a real landscape of what's going on with all these different power brokers. And because Michonne kind of rides off with this we see this, what looks like this highly organized group moving together that she rides off to join. So presuming that's not a civic republic, it doesn't look like it. We're going to have I think we're going to be moving into like having a lot of very powerful, different organized groups and they're going to come into conflict with each other eventually for one reason or another.
You pull out wars between them. I mean,
yeah, and I mean that could be one of the things where if Alicia pops back up and she's immune, that could be the spark that starts the conflagration. Or if you have a sudden evolution of the zombies where they start being able to run and become super strong, if somehow
what if the zombies take sides?
Yeah, well, that's another thing. You had one thing The Walking Dead never explored, but that was like something that George Romero was kind of hinting at in his Dead movies, Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead, is the zombies starting to develop intelligence or a modicum of intelligence. And especially in Land of the Dead, there's very strong hints that Big Daddy, the leader of the zombies, is communicating orders to them, like in a hive mind. Something Zack Snyder did in his Netflix movie Army of the Dead, where you kind of had intelligent zombies.
I just thought of a parody where the main character would be a zombie dentist.
Yes. Keeping the teeth fresh for the zombies, to giving the zombies dentures.
That's very important. Dental care is very zombies.
Well, they can be given fangs, they're more efficient.
Yeah, that was George Romero actually had a comic book he wrote that unfortunately wasn't very good, but it was like Empire of the Dead, where you had vampires encountering the living dead zombies.
Oh,
but it would be
creatures.
It would be, and I think we'll have like that Tales of the Living Dead, the anthology series, come back, because that's a good way to introduce new characters. And the last episode on there, they kind of had a supernatural horror-oriented episode where it suggested there were some potential ghosts there, and you kind of wonder at some point, will that get picked up? Or will they start to maybe go into down that kind of story?
What about aliens? Aliens.
Wasn't that the suggestion from like one of the showrunners that they never explained the origin and a meteorite?
Oh, right, you said that. Yeah.
Well, and that might explain why they're evolving intelligence and so on.
And actually, it's kind of funny you mentioned aliens. When the Walking Dead comic was first pitched by Robert Kirkman, Image wasn't too interested because there's never been a really successful zombie comic. So Robert Kirkman said, well, it'll be zombies at first, but then it'll be revealed that aliens are behind them.
Oh, okay.
And so
that makes sense. At least, gives a little more explanation.
He wasn't telling them the truth, but it got them to invest in the comic, and then they saw the sales numbers for it. And after about 5 issues, they came to him and go, there's no aliens, are there? No. Okay. No problem.
Not yet.
they actually did a spin-off kind of take on Robert Kirkman, wrote a short series of what if he had followed that idea with the zombies being controlled by aliens. Yeah, so it's like he actually kind of developed that a little bit.
I feel like they've got to do something, right? Because the zombies are kind of boring. I mean, there's not a lot that they do that's interesting. I mean, they gotta figure out something to do for these new shows. I mean,
I think that's why they're evolving that, especially the one that was in France, the one that ran fast and was strong. It's time to kind of make the zombies scary again. Yeah. Because
do they speak French though? Do they understand French?
Well, they didn't say intelligent, but heck, it'd be interesting if the super fast and strong zombies could bite other zombies, and suddenly those zombies evolve into something like them. That would actually be pretty fun. Where you could actually start to have like this, the armies of running zombies, because that would throw everything up in the air. all these societies that have been built on, we know how zombies are going to operate, so we've got our entire protection structure set up to deal with that. If you have a horde of 5,000 zombies running full tilt at you, say like World War Z or Last Train to Busan, watch out. Or on that Netflix Korean zombie series, We're All Dead Here.
I haven't seen that one. Is it good?
Oh yeah. The Netflix has several really good Korean zombie series. I think the Last Train to Busan is kind of like South Korea's Night of the Living Dead, because a lot of the South
I
Korean.
think we saw that movie. That's the movie, right?
I think we did see it. Yeah.
It's on the train. It's on the train, and it's pretty much the zombies in the series, The Kingdom, which is like set in the Middle Ages in Korea. And Rampage, and then We're All Dead Here, all feature these kind of really fast zombies that are essentially like those in Train to Busan.
In my parody, the zombies are going to have zombie Olympics, and they're going to compete. Running will be, I guess, the most popular one, but
Olympics,
you'll have archery where they lose their arms and they try to shoot a ball to shoot an arrow. Hilarity will ensue.
I think there's actually a zombie comedy that kind of does something like that, with the zombie able to think. I want to say it's called Bubba, but it's been quite a while since I've watched it. I think it's called Bubba, but don't quote me on that. Of course,
I can look up zombie comedies.
Cheyenne adds that hashtag Alive is another really good zombie movie from South Korea, again featuring the uber fast zombies. But certainly that could definitely change The Walking Dead. Although if all the zombies are running, I don't know if can you still call it The Walking Dead if they're running?
But what if the slow zombies from Walking Dead? What if the slow zombies met the fast zombies?
Yeah.
And who would survive? Because
the Power Walking Dead.
The money on the fast zombies.
Yeah, the Power Walking Dead. So they're doing like their exercise and walking faster and training, and then they find the Nike warehouse, and all hell breaks loose. Then
it becomes the Nike ad.
Come on, that's a movie right there.
That's what it's all about.
The zombie wars. Bring all the zombie types from different movies, and they all confront each other. See who survives there.
Well, it'll be interesting to
see.
And
they're really scared of humans. Their big fear is humans. When they show up, they're the bad guys.
Yeah, kind of like on a parallel with.
So you root for the zombies.
Kind of
really
like
feel bad when the people show up.
In a parallel to like Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, the original novel, and that was done to a degree in the Will Smith movie, but not quite as much as the original.
This cat
Richard Matheson novel. Oh, the kitty. I think we're going to see a lot of different explorations in the Walking Dead, and certainly the zombie genre is not going away. I mean, you have The Last of Us, which, not only is it a great zombie show, but it's really like the first one of the rare uber good video game series that is out there. I mean, there's some that have, like, we're seeing more and more of them that are good, like Super Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, those of course are geared more toward the younger audiences, but compared to like previous Resident Evil, anybody? Let's see.
I think Last of Us has a lot of emotional depth, and I know from my students that I had students talking about that game when it first came out and getting really into it. I even let a couple of them write papers about it, and I just saw the depth of interest in it. And I knew it was a popular game. I never got a chance to play any of those games, but I knew that there was a lot of a lot of buzz around that game and the sequels. And yeah, I mean, I just think that they take the subject matter seriously, and they focus, as Liana was saying earlier, on character-driven stories. And it's not quite as nihilistic, right, as The Walking Dead. Ultimately, The Walking Dead is always about survivors trying to pick up the pieces. There's an actual hope for a cure in The Last of Us, and that sort of keeps the story moving towards a potentially more optimistic, conclusion. And it has a powerful telos, right? Walking Dead, right? I think one of the most touching things about the show was that notion that why should I keep fighting? Why do I keep going on in the face of the impossible? And I think that's what made the show kind of beautiful. Sometimes I really love the early scenes with Abraham, where he's about to kill himself. That's one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. And he's about to just give up, right? Even though he's surviving, even though he's outlasted many of the people with him, but he loses his family, right? And he doesn't have any reason to keep going. And then he makes up one, basically, right? He buys into the sort of outrageous lies of that character, and he keeps fighting. And I think that the show is at its best when it has characters like that, and kind of gives people a reason to keep going despite the odds. And I think that's what fans kind of got out of it. So that's what I certainly got out of it.
And I think The Last of Us too, they made the choice of they toned down the video game elements of it and concentrated on the characters, which is something that I think a lot of video games forget to do. Like, for example, the Resident Evil films. The Resident Evil films are always kind of let's get to the big shoot 'em up scenes or big action scenes. Whereas The Last of Us said, let's tell a character-driven story that reflects a video game, but we won't make it so video gamey. I know that's not a word, but we won't make it so video gamey that
Well, it is now a word.
But still, I mean, it doesn't sacrifice the story. It's, and I think that's where it helps too that The Last of Us was a series as opposed to a movie where the creators of the movie feel like we got to make this feel like the video game. So say something like Doom or something, where they want to make sure that your audience is going to see what the video game was like, as opposed to really focusing on the story.
I would like to see a really good Doom movie. Too bad they've never done that.
Oh yeah. Well, given the success of the video games now, I suspect a lot of the old video games are going to be kind of dusted off, and let's give it another shot. I mean,
Borderlands, for example, would do well. Right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the great unknowns would have been fascinating if it ever happened. At one point, for a while, George Romero was attached to do a Resident Evil movie. Seeing Romero do a Resident Evil movie would have been absolutely amazing. You can only wonder what because Romero would not have, I think, gone, we got to get to the video game elements. I think Romero would have almost definitely told a really good, solid story. And that's one of those great lost opportunities. What would have a Resident Evil movie look like, directed by George Romero?
Yeah. I mean, I like those Romero movies, like whether it's his very first film, which is really kind of an interesting socio-political satire, right? And then the movies after that, like the one set in the mall. I mean, that was one of my favorites of his. Yeah, because it did such a good job of making fun of like the sort of inanities and meaninglessness of American materialist culture, right? You're supposed to buy all of this shit.
Well,
that constitutes your life, right? Yeah.
All of Romero's movies had that element of societal commentary in them, like Day of the Dead, The Wasted Opportunity. that these survivors had with having a perfect shelter, like an underground bunker that they could have really, really used to kind of reestablish society. Land of the Dead, you know, where it's kind of like a potential solution is offered of live and let live. And then he even went back and kind of rebooted his entire series with Diary of the Dead, where he kind of did what would Night of the Living Dead have been like in the age of social media. And one would even wonder now more if George Romero was still around and could do a Night of the Living Dead set in 2025, what that would be like.
Zombies on the moon.
Yeah.
On the moon.
Yeah. Or AI zombies or something like that. That, you know, zombies
AI,
in a
cybernetic
virtual
AI
world.
zombies. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's of course,
coming.
that's one of the rich storytelling elements of the zombie genre, is that they can be told anywhere. You had a couple of our audience, audience saying that the book of World War Z was very good. You know, both the book and the movie actually ended up being good, even though the books and the movie and the book on Case of World War Z is like, there's the World War Z movie is an adaptation in name only. It's just nothing like the book.
One thing about the book that I liked, that, you know, we were talking about earlier, is it focused a lot more on the scientists, right, and the doctors and the people who were trying to control the outbreak and investigate it. Last of Us also does, I think, a good job with that. You know, like the first responders, in a certain sense, are the pathologists and the people who are trying to figure out what's happening.
That makes more sense to me.
And I thought that made it good, right? It builds tension. What? I'm sorry. What?
No, that was my complaint in relation to Walking Dead. Like, where is everybody who could potentially scientifically resolve this? Like,
well, a lot of them get killed.
But
I think in World War Z, a lot of them die, right? So shortly after they're able to figure out what's going on, right? Things go south pretty quickly.
Well, so. in the TV series, in the book, that's the case. Whereas in the movie, because the main character is now kind of I guess not totally a scientist, but he's very smart. You know, Brad Pitt's character.
Yeah.
And although with The Last of Us, even though the scientists are there, we also see that the scientists can also potentially be as problematic as the
zombies in Chinese labs.
Yeah, not to give away anything with let me be careful describing The Last of Us, because I don't want to give away the ending, because it's still a fairly recent show. The
it's a shame that Bella Ramsey is not coming back. I think she's not. It's pretty clear. Yeah, because her character grows up by 5 years, and there will be a different actress.
That's too bad.
That's what I read just now, and she's going to be in another show, but apparently she's not coming back here, which is very sad.
I hope that's. Well, I think I'll hope that maybe that's that's like some rumor that ends up not being true. If not, man, that's going to be a loss for the show.
I think so. Yeah.
By the time you get to season 2, she's going to look older anyway, because
well, apparently she's already older than her character 5 years later, so she's 19 now. She's actually, the actress is older than the character. I think they said that the character will become a really badass killer, so maybe she wasn't okay with that, or I don't know the explanation.
You could do a lot of makeup on it. I mean, I would think.
I mean, I do hope they keep her, but just to give an example, we were watching House of the Dragon, which is the prequel to Game of Thrones, and there, I really love the characters that they start with, Rhaenyra and her friend, and like at some point during the show, they just changed them to older actresses because they suddenly, it was 10 years later. And I was so heartbroken. But then the new ones grew on me. So I'm like, well, okay, I can see if they find a good actress to follow up. And I
think it's also the
I'm
storytelling difference that going in with House of the Dragon, the intention always was to kind of skip over a lot of material to get to show the origin of the Dance of the Dragons, that civil war that you're going to have among the Targaryens. But in order to do that, you kind of had to jump ahead to the it would have taken you couldn't do like the original series where you just take your time leading up to it, because I think the intention was always to tell the storyline at a quicker pace, especially because George R. Martin's source material is basically written as a historical tome. It's still a novel, but it's more like a tome of history as opposed to a full-fledged book, with dialogue and everything. And I think that's part of what helped make the show kind of really grow and exciting, because it had that accelerated pace.
I have to I can't stay much longer because I have a game, a softball game to go to. And I think I'm pushing it with the time. So
yeah, I was getting ready. I was getting ready to wind it down anyway. I was just looking over. Okay, let's see. At least based on comments made of as Mark last month on the 16th and 14th, Bella Ramsey is in fact not leaving The Last of Us.
Okay.
Unless there's something more recent.
But
that, I was just looking up because I would have thought that would have been, the headlines from that would have been, I thought, a lot more prominent, or that would have made a lot more news. And I think HBO, Warner Brothers Discovery would be absolutely out of their effing gourds to,
especially when they have
Bella
like
Ramsey.
a big cast member like Pedro Pascal that works well with her. I mean, they've established a rapport. You wouldn't want to change that.
It was, and we'll end with this. I have a funny story. My wife and I were watching The Last of Us over spring break, kind of doing a binge watch, 1 or 2 episodes per night. And she was saying something. It's like, boy, the lead actor just reminds me of the Mandalorian. And I said, that's because he is the Mandalorian. And I said, oh, I should have let it go and said,
gets to show his face.
I don't see it. Nah. And maybe they're related somehow.
You're messing with her.
I mean, you could understand, given that in the Mandalorian, we don't see Pedro Pascal's face all that much. In fact, sometimes he's really not even, the actor's not even in the armor.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think that's how he was able to do The Last of Us and The Mandalorian at the same time. Apparently, they were actually filming in like the same location, so he just like had to walk across the studio set to go from appear one in the other.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm glad he was able to do
Did they call him now America's daddy or something because the father figure in both?
Yeah. Hey, he wears it well.
He's a zaddy.
Yeah, let's just hope he doesn't get him mixed up that one day the Mandalorian shows up and there's Bella Ramsey going, what, where the heck am I? And then Grogu is throwing clickers around with the Force, and
Grogu could kill zombies big time.
Yeah.
You could trade him for that.
I think the Mandalorians probably would too. Oh hell, for a whole division of Mandalorians. That would probably end the zombie apocalypse pretty damn fast. I mean, just get on jetpacks and boom, 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 boom. as long as they're not Imperial stormtroopers. Yeah, you want Mandalorians, you don't want stormtroopers.
Zombie stormtroopers. Oh my God, think of that. Zombie stormtroopers.
You wouldn't have to worry. They'd miss every time they try to bite you. So to our audience, thank you everyone for attending. If you're one of my students, just remind you to email me and let me know that you attended, and you'll get the extra credit. Join us a week from today when we'll be looking at phase 4 of the MCU. I would say, well, I guess I'll go ahead and say it. Same bat time, same bat channel, even though Nevermind Batman isn't Marvel, but I just couldn't resist.
Is it Friday or Saturday? Is it Friday too or Saturday?
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Okay, a week from today. Okay.
Yeah, same. Okay. That's why I said same bat time, same bat channel.
We'll be back. It's good seeing you, David.
Yep,
hey, good talking to all of you. Sorry I was a few minutes late because of technical stuff, but I'll try to work it out next time.
Not a problem.
Bye.
Bye.